What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Draft Season Never Ends, the Aftermath's NFL Draft Podcast. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm excited. We are now 13 days away from the first round of the NFL Draft getting underway, and I really cannot wait. Been going through a lot of film, getting excited. Posted a ton this week on AftermathSports.com. You can check out all the content that I've been putting out of the draft there. Make sure that you're checking out there pretty much regularly every weekday at the very least, and then usually some additional things here or there on social media on the weekends. But yeah, it's been a ton of fun. I'm really enjoying kind of finalizing some of the stuff in this draft class, seeing so many more mock drafts come out, all that great stuff. I actually had another mock draft come out just this past Monday, so make sure you check that one out as well. But today I'm going to do something that I think I have a lot of fun doing, and you go through this whole draft process, right? And there are so many guys that you fall in love with throughout the process, right? And there are guys that you really feel almost a certain amount of like investment in to see them do well because you believe in them so much. You think they're going to be such a success at the next level. Some people call them draft crushes. Some people call them my guys. I've heard a couple different terms used to describe them. So I'm going to go through my 2022 NFL draft crushes today. The guys that I think that I really like, I'm super high on. I think are going to have great careers. And, I think it's a fun exercise. That's one of my favorite things to do is just be able to talk about some of my favorite prospects in this draft. So we're going to go through all of that today, and feel free, get at me on social media. Let me know who your draft crushes are, who your favorite players in this draft class are. Maybe some guys that are sleepers in later rounds, things like that. Let me know where, maybe guys that I should be paying attention to that are some of your favorites in this class. I'm going to start with one of the guys that I think is going to come off the board very, very early in this draft, and that's Ahmad Gardner, Sauce Gardner, cornerback out of Cincinnati. He is just such a fun watch, absolutely shut down corner playing at Cincinnati, and just, long, big, fast. That's the thing is, I really, personally, and as I've developed kind of like, going through watching prospects and stuff like that over the last few years, I found that I tend to gravitate more towards longer corners, as a lot of people tend to do when evaluating these players, is guys that are usually at least 5'11", have longer arms and can move. And Sauce Gardner checks every single one of them. Plus, he had a fantastic college career, didn't allow a touchdown pass to the intended receiver throughout his entire college career, which is just outrageous. But he's capable of playing press man coverage, which I think I really like personally. It's something it's a style that I really like seeing in the NFL. But at the same time, he's big enough, he's fast enough. He has all of the instincts and everything else you want to see from a guy who's capable of playing zone on top of that. So scheme versatile for sure. I have him as my number 2 player on my board right now. I really hope the Jets select him at number 4. As a Jets fan, I would be thrilled if we get Sauce Gardner. I understand, obviously, that corner maybe isn't the biggest need at this point after they went out and they signed DJ Reed this offseason from Seattle, but I still really, really like Sauce. And I think the comparison I've seen a lot is to Antonio Cromartie, who, for Jets fans, if you remember, when the Jets were really, really good about, 10, 11 years ago now, their corners were Darrelle Revis and Antonio Cromartie. So if you get a player who's capable of competing like that and being a true number 1 corner, that's the thing is, Cromartie would have been a number 1 corner on pretty much any other team, but he was on a team with Darrelle Revis, so he was the number 2 corner, which is just ridiculous to think about how good that defense was. But anyway, I'm getting off track here. The point is that I think he would be a great fit there in New York. If not, I think he actually is still a great fit in New York, just with the New York Giants as well. Maybe even the Houston Texans take him at 3. I've seen some mocks recently having the Lions taking him at 2. It's not that I love the player, obviously. I just don't know that that's like the best investment for the Lions right now. They just spent a premium pick on a corner a couple years ago, and Jeff Okudah hasn't quite panned out yet. And that doesn't mean you can't spend another one if you really believe that he is a true lockdown corner. I would just be a little bit surprised to see them do that. We'll see. Draft day is coming up soon. We'll know the answer to it before too long. All right, I'm going to spend not a ton of time on all these guys. I'm going to try and get through these so we can talk about a couple different players here. Next guy on my list, Devin Lloyd, linebacker out of Utah. This is a guy that I've actually been tracking for a really long time. I started watching Bradley Anae back in the 2020 draft cycle, and I went in and wanted to get a sense for how he was, and I fell in love with Bradley Anae. But I also Devin Lloyd caught my attention. He was somebody that I was aware of pretty much immediately as this guy who can move around, play a couple different places in that linebacker core, was able to play outside in kind of that rover star role. I almost thought he might be more like a safety at times, based on how I watched him move around the field. But he's clearly got the physicality to play as a linebacker. There's no question about that. We've seen that the last 2 seasons from him. He can rush the passer a bit as well, but he's great in coverage. He's got good speed. There's a lot that I really like about him, and I had him as a top 75 player last year before he announced he's returning to school. Now I have him as a top 10 player. I mean, I really think he's going to have that type of impact on a defense. Maybe not quite the level of Micah Parsons, but Micah Parsons was a top 5 player last year. There's a little bit of a difference. But I will say that I really like Devin Lloyd. I wouldn't be shocked if he slides a little bit in the draft come April, by April 28th. Not April, we're in April. But that's because I just don't think the league values off-ball linebackers a tremendous amount. Like, if you can't bring that pass rushing element to the table here, I don't think you're going to go in a premium position anymore. We haven't seen that really a whole lot. Even when you think about the linebackers, quote-unquote linebackers, that have gone in the top 10 in recent years, it's been more guys like Isaiah Simmons, who are really position versatile, could play safety, could play nickel corner, could play linebacker, could rush off the edge. There's a lot of different positions that Isaiah Simmons could come into the league with. Even Zaven Collins, who was a highly rated linebacker last year, ended up, going in the mid-teens. So I could see Lloyd probably going somewhere in that late teens, early 20s range. I will be interested to see what team is willing to spend a first-round draft pick on him, because I think he's a fantastic player. I think he is one of the better defenders in this draft. But the problem is that it's just not a big position of need. But still, I love Devin Lloyd. I think he's going to have a great pro career. I think someone's going to end up probably getting a steal drafting him in the back half of the first round. These are some of the obvious ones up front. I get that. These are big-name guys that are probably first-round picks. I'm going to get into... I have one more of those, and then we'll get into some more of the maybe mid-day 2 or even later guys that I really like in this draft class. Next one up here, Devonta Wyatt, defensive lineman from Georgia. You could take any Georgia team that you tried to watch. You usually will find yourself kind of gravitating towards other players that you might set out to watch Jordan Davis and you end up watching Nakobe Dean, or you might set out to watch Louis Cine and you might get distracted by Darian Kendrick, or you might set out to watch Quay Walker and end up watching Devonta Wyatt, which I watched a lot of different Georgia film this year, again focusing on different players because there are so many great players on this defense. And a lot of the times, though, I found myself watching Devonta Wyatt. And I thought, why is this guy not getting more love? It was really interesting. As early on in the season, Jordan Davis was being talked about that a lot. Nakobe Dean was being talked about a lot. Obviously Kendrick was as well. I think he had a lot of publicity coming from the fact that he played previously at Clemson and had been in a college ball playoff before. But I was surprised that there wasn't more love for Devonta Wyatt. And now, obviously, people have come way around on that. We're now seeing Wyatt mocked in the first round of most mock drafts. Most that you see these days, Wyatt is somewhere even in the top half of the first round. And I think that's a really good spot for him. I love him. I think he's super physical. He's got great burst off the line. He's a little bit position versatile as well. You could kind of play him if you run a 4-3 front. You could play him at defensive tackle. If you run a 3-4 front, he could play at defensive end. So I think there's definitely some position versatility there as well. Scheme versatility, which is great. He's super strong against the run. He's got a fun array of pass rush moves, really. Like, you watch him go out there, and he's a little bit creative. He's definitely got some room to grow, and he's not an elite pass rusher by any means, but he's got some different moves that he breaks out every once in a while. He's got a rip, a spin. The spin you don't see a whole lot, but the rip move you see a lot. Swim move every once in a while. So there are some different things. He's capable of bull rushing guys. He's strong. Tested well, as pretty much every Georgia defender did, right? So I love, he's probably my favorite Georgia defender in this draft class, which is saying something, right? When you've got Trevon Walker, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker, take your pick. Any of these guys that are probably going to be first-round picks or, early day 2 picks. And I think Devonta Wyatt might be the best of the group. That's why I'm putting him on the list of my guys this year. Okay, so next up here, I've got a tight end out of Washington. That's right, Cade Auten. I love this guy. I put on the film, and I'm just blown away every time. Not by what you would expect. He's not the same type of player as like Kyle Pitts last year, who went in the top 10, or top 5, I should say. He was number 4 overall pick last year at the Atlanta Falcons, who was just this elite receiver, basically this hybrid between a receiver and a tight end, and kind of this part of this new wave of guys we've seen like Darren Waller and Mike Gesicki, those big body tight ends who are really just like big receivers at the next level. That's not who Cade Auten is. He is a solid receiver, but he's a fantastic blocker. He is probably the best blocking tight end in this class. You put him out there in pass protection, he's like an extra offensive tackle. He's able to set the edge against the run, get to the second level. It's a blocking clinic. I did tweet out earlier this week a clip that I found of him. It's fantastic. He, playing against Michigan earlier this year, coming off the edge, like just blows up Aiden Hutchinson, the projected number 1 overall pick in this draft class. He knocks him clean off his feet with a block. I mean, that's the type of play strength we're talking about here. I really love the guy. He didn't get a chance to test throughout the pre-draft process because he had an injury, but I think he's going to be a steal for an NFL team looking in maybe the 3rd or 4th round of this draft. He has all the physical tools to succeed at the next level. He can play in line. He can slot out. He can flex out and play in the slot. I don't know that you're going to line him up on the boundary like we've seen with, like I said, those guys talking about before, those receiver types at the tight end position. But I do think there's a ton that you can do with him, and he's really a well-rounded tight end prospect that I don't think is getting enough love right now. He is just put it on every time, and I'm blown away by the blocking, and I'm impressed by the receiving as well. There's not a tremendous amount there, but he was a lot of times the go-to receiver in Washington's offense, even though they didn't have a great passing offense this past year, at least in some of the games that I watched. And now, granted, the game that I've watched most recently was Michigan, so maybe I'm colored by that because Michigan has a great defense, but even still, you just put on the tape and you see like there's so much more that you wish Washington would have done with Cade Auten in this offense. So I think he has the potential to, if put in the right position, to be very successful at the next level. I think he's going to end up being a steal in the NFL. I'm actually going to stick with tight end here. I have 2 tight ends on my draft crushes list. That's right. Trey Mcbride, tight end out of Colorado State. This is another guy who he caught my attention last year. He had 330 yards and 4 touchdowns in just 4 games. So I was like, okay, guy's scoring pretty consistently. Not a ton of tight ends are. And, putting up decent yardage, right? 330 yards across 4 games for a college tight end. Not bad at all. Well, he took off this year and really took it to a next level. He had 90 catches for 1,121 yards and only scored 1 touchdown. But, I mean, those numbers that you get there as a receiver, that's unbelievable. I mean, for a college tight end to see that level of production, we don't often see that. And I'm surprised that we aren't seeing him potentially talked about maybe in that early day 2, late even day 1. It wouldn't be a shock to see him sneak into round 1. Maybe a team like the Cincinnati Bengals, who just lost C.J. Uzomah this past offseason. I could see them maybe going after a tight end there. That's a possibility. I don't know. Maybe the Chiefs, if they want to start running some 2 tight end sets, but they still have Travis Kelce. So there's a couple of teams at the back end of the first round that could potentially go after Trey Mcbride. If not, I think early in the second round, you could see a team maybe like the New York Giants, who did just lose Evan Ingram this past offseason. There's a couple, they have bigger needs, I get that, but I think he would be a really good fit and a really productive player within this offense. He's got really good hands. He catches the ball away from his body. He ran really well at his pro day too. Mid 4.5s is what it was reported as, which is pretty impressive for a tight end, especially somebody that you can kind of line up wherever. Unlike I was talking about Cade Auten before, he is somebody that you could line up in that outside kind of big body receiver role, where I don't know that Auten is necessarily comfortable with that. If you turn on McBride's tape, you actually see Colorado State do that with him sometimes to just try and get a mismatch out on the boundary. But you could play him in line like a traditional tight end, flex him out, put him in the slot. There's a lot of different places you can put him. I think an offensive coordinator is going to love the versatility that he brings to the table. Don't be surprised if McBride goes pretty early. I think he's going to be the first tight end off the board, and I think, honestly, he's going to be a very, very productive player at the next level. I'm going to be really interested to watch this tight end class, and there's a couple of guys here that we're sleeping on quite a bit that maybe deserve a little bit more publicity than they're currently getting. We're going to go way off the map here. Somebody that you probably haven't heard much about, and that's to UTSA for a running back by the name of Sincere McCormick. I love watching him play. Somebody that I put on the film early this past year, he was putting up eye-popping numbers early on in the season. And that was, I mean, keep in mind, I know people are like, oh, it's UTSA. UTSA was ranked. They were undefeated for a good chunk of the season. I believe they started 11-0 or 10-0 or something like that. Won the Conference USA championship this year. So there's a lot to like about what UTSA was able to do. And their offense, more often than not, went through Sincere McCormick. He's somebody. So here's the thing. There's a lot of tread on the tires at this point. He's had, well, I think he's close to 500 college carries, which is definitely a bit of a red flag. I'm not advocating for this guy to be the first running back off the board. Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker III, maybe CJ Spiller or Isaiah Spiller are going to be the guys that come off the board first, right? We're not going to see Sincere McCormick cracking the second round even. But I could see him potentially going maybe late day 2, early day 3, and being a really, really good, I think, change of pace back. He's not got elite speed, at least, so this is where it's tough. You look at the 40 time, which was in the 4.6s, and you think, okay, he's not really a burner, he can't get downfield. You put it on the tape, it's a totally different story. He's got that breakaway speed. He's able to get downfield. He broke off a ton of long runs this past year when playing, against decent competition. I know Conference USA isn't the same thing as the SEC, but he looked pretty good, and they put up big numbers. I mean, it was the second straight year that he had at least 1,400 yards rushing. He had 68 receptions in 3 years as well, so there's some pass-catching ability is there as well. There's just I think he's a well-rounded back, somebody who's going to be able to contribute right away in the NFL, and a guy that is going to be a productive player on his rookie contract. And a lot of the times, that's what you're looking for, is just finding a guy who's going to be productive on a team-friendly, affordable contract, so that way you don't have to go out there and try and pay running backs. Teams hate doing that at this point. So if you can find a guy in the 3rd or 4th round who's capable of producing maybe 800 yards of offense a year, a few touchdowns, decent as a pass blocker, when you leave him in there, there's a lot that I like about Sincere McCormick. He's one of my favorite running back prospects in this class. Definitely not somebody that you're going to hear talked about a ton in the lead up to draft day, but somebody I think when you see if your team gets him, again, I'm a Jets fan, right? So I'm always looking at this as the Jets' perspective. They could use a guy like Sincere McCormick to kind of round out that backfield. He's not going to be the number one guy. They have Michael Carter for that, but if they spend another 4th round draft pick on a running back here at the early stages of the 4th round, and they trade into the late 3rd round and take him, I think it would be a great fit. I think he would be somebody who could be a nice change of pace back, good between the tackles, good one-cut running back. If he gets the seam, he's gonna be gone. Probably not quite as much at the next level, but he's gonna rip off chunk plays every once in a while if you give him the opportunities to. And I think he could have a lot of success at the next level. But behind, like I said, it's all going to be a little bit scheme dependent, as most players and prospects tend to be when they try and get to the next level and have success. But I think he's somebody that could have success in a couple different offensive sets. And I just overall really like the player. I think he deserves a little more love than he's been getting. Let's round it out here by talking about another Georgia player. I know, sorry, but it's hard to get away from this team. They have so many great defenders, and it's not going to be one of the guys that I think you're hearing quite as much. It's not Trevon Walker, not Jordan Davis, not even Jacoby Dean. It's actually another linebacker on this Georgia team, and that's Quay Walker. I think he is just a dynamic player that does not get enough love. I have a 1st round grade on him, which I think maybe a lot of people kind of see him going somewhere on day 2. I think if he gets to day 2, he's going to be a really great value pick for somebody there. He's 6'4", 240. He posted a 4.51 40 time at the combine, which is really impressive. He looked great against Alabama, that is NFL level talent. Now, it's not as refined yet because those guys are still in college, but Alabama puts out basically close to NFL level, as close to an NFL team as you get most years in the NFL, offense and defense. And in the national championship game, he had 8 tackles and 6 pressures. right? This is an inside linebacker, or an out. He can play. That's the beauty of this too. He can kind of play in that off-ball Will or Mike linebacker role, or Will or Sam, linebacker role. You can put him with Mike. There's a lot of different places you can line him up. He's able to get after the passer on some of those blitzing opportunities, and he's got sideline to sideline range. There's so much to like about this. He's good in coverage. He's able to move. He keeps his eyes in the right place. Doesn't get fooled a lot of times. Reads his keys pretty well. I think he's a first-round player. He's my number 2 linebacker in this class, behind Devin Lloyd, who I had already on this list. So I think he's somebody that, if he's there in the early second round or even the late first round, just pull the trigger. He's going to be a great fit. I even could see him going as early as number 21 to the New England Patriots. I know that they have some other needs there on that team, but he fits so much of what Bill Belichick loves in a linebacker who's got the speed, the range, and the size to be successful at the next level. Even more so than Nakobe Dean, who I love. He's a really fun player, but I think when you just look for a prototypical NFL linebacker who's scheme versatile and can do a lot of things for you, the guy you're going to want from this Georgia defense is actually Quay Walker. So those are my guys, my favorite prospects from this NFL draft class. I'm sure I'll find even a few more as I kind of dive back into the last little bit of tape I'm going to be able to watch here heading into the actual draft, which is now just 13 days away. I cannot wait. It's so exciting. Also, I want to make sure that I don't forget to do this. Keep an eye out in the next couple of days. I'm going to be announcing a draft kind of contest of sorts. We'll have basically like a series of almost like prop bets that you kind of have to pick. And I'm going to have it set up. It'll be a Google form. So I'll put that out there on social media. I'll put it in the comments and links and stuff like that as much as I can on podcasts. And definitely put a post out on aftermathsports.com as well, making sure everybody is able to find it there. But I'm going to have it set up where you get to kind of pick a couple different things. I haven't decided on everything yet. I'm going to definitely consult some sports books before I make some final decisions on this stuff. But who's going to be the first wide receiver drafted this year? Who will be the first quarterback to come off the board? Will we see, how many edge rushers will we see, or how many defenders will we see drafted in the top 10? Stuff like that, where it's kind of like some fun, different props that you get to pick, and it'll be interesting. I think it'll be a lot of fun for people to participate in, and we're actually going to have some prizes to that as well. So if you win first place in this contest, I'm going to be giving away a full year subscription to ESPN Plus, which is great. I have ESPN Plus. It's fantastic. It's so much great content, so many really good, well-written articles that are now behind that paywall. If you're a fan of any sort of soccer or anything, or even maybe a college football team that isn't traditionally on big national TV, anything like that, you're able to watch so many college football games on there, and it's so much fun. I love it. It's really good. Second place, you'll actually get a free 1-month subscription to the Draft Scout, Matt Miller's draft site. So I'll be giving that away. And then third place will be a 1-month subscription to The Athletic. So some really great access to some awesome sports media out there. Want to make sure that I'm trying to find something that hopefully people will find valuable, have some fun with. I'll announce contest rules and other type of stuff too. But basically it's going to be that you have to go in, follow the site, that type of thing, and follow on social media in order to be eligible. But I'll put out a full list of contest rules, and I'll make sure that I give this information again on the podcast next week, so that way you guys are all able to hop in on it if you are interested in participating. So thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate the support. This is a ton of fun. I'm kind of getting my feet back under me in the podcast game and having some fun doing so, just kind of experimenting with what works well. Hopefully going to have maybe some guests on in the future, some different things like that. So we'll see where we end up. But as always, make sure you follow the show on wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Anchor, whatever you might use to get your podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button there so you never miss an episode. Feel free to rate, review, and all of that great stuff as well, because that helps other people find the show, and it really just means a lot to me. I love getting feedback. If you have feedback, feel free to also hit me up on social media. You can find me at cmcglynn84 on Twitter. You can also follow The Aftermath on Facebook at Aftermath Sports, and of course on Twitter as well at Aftermath Sports as well. So make sure you don't miss out on any of that stuff. I'm trying to put some stuff out there, get some people engaged as we get into draft season as well. Really, really into the meat of it here. We are so close to the NFL draft, and I genuinely cannot wait. So once again, thanks again for tuning into this week's episode. Make sure you tune back in next Friday for another episode. So thanks so much for tuning in. You guys will hear from me again next week.